bienvenue à cette session qui porte sur l'initiative des routes de la soie. I'm going to start in French, few words, and then we are going to hold the session in English. So on va essentiellement parler anglais dans cette session, mais je vous faisais le mot de bienvenue en français. We have a very distinguished panel session today to tackle a very important issue, which is Road and Belt initiatives, and we are going to have a sum up of this Chinese to Africa initiative, not only to Africa, but Chinese cooperation toward all over the world. And I will give the floor to my first panelist, Mr. Wang, and if we can go back to what has been the starting point of this Road and Belt initiative that has been announcing 10 years ago by the Chinese president, and if you can look at the main realization of this initiative today, and what is more or less the point where we have been reaching in terms of Chinese cooperation in the world. I'll let you introduce yourself in a few words.
Okay, merci beaucoup. It's very interesting. More panelists in the audience, huh?
They're going to come.
It's like the BRI. Actually, 152 countries signed, and so it's more than we say a third of the fourth of all the members of the UN.
Two-thirds of the members of the UN.
No, three-fourths. Three-fourths. So that's mean more panelists.
Okay.
Okay. But among all the 152, actually there are 52 from Africa. That means African countries who has diplomatic relations with China all signed. So that means, I think, very attractive to the Africans, because 40 years ago, before open and reform, China's per capita GDP is only 1/3 of the South Sahara continent. So when the Chinese leave the poverty, contribute to more than nearly 800 million, right? Leave the poverty. Why not Africans? So I think that's the first attractions. And the second attraction to African, even to Arabic, 22 Arabic countries, 21 countries,
out of
only one is not,
yeah.
because still suffered a civil war with Yemen or something. Okay, there also very eyes on the BRI for the transformation to green, a new energy. China is the electronic cars and the low carbon and digital, very fantastic development because of the so-called COVID crisis, and we should hurry up to this transformation. But now, not just the countries, 32 international organizations also signed MOU jointly. So BRI is not just a bilateral; it's more regional and multilateral. So in my words, it's maybe AIIBization. So lean, green, clean. So with a high quality of development. So I think Morocco actually is a pioneer because Morocco has good relations with everybody, I think, thanks to the historic memory of your great navigator, Ibn Battuta. Everybody, I think, in China knows about the Asian Silk Road. So here, these people say from Quanzhou and Tangier, these two connections each other. So his book also published in China, so very popular. So we'd like to recommend to maybe Chinese movies to make a movie, a drama on that. It's our joint memory. And also for the African participants, not just China is most of the #1 trade partner, but the slogans of the synergies with the African Union. You have 2063, the 100 years of the African Union. So we say African dream is made in Africa with China for the world. So that's totally changed the mindset. Made in Africa, that's like Ethiopia, that's Eastern Park, Industrial Park. If you think about the traditional economists, say, oh, your market is too limited, there is no need for you to make so many shoes and clothes, but you think big, think about the world. So now the made in Ethiopia, the best quality sells to maybe Europe, the second maybe sells to India, and then the cheap one sells to African continents. So that means Africa to be the hub, regional hub of industrialization, transportation, share the experience of the Chinese opening reform. If we want to get a rich, build the roads. So infrastructure building, mutual connectivity, to help Africans mutually connected to each other. And then I think it's a very dynamic, a young population, good for the industrialization and digitalization. I'm still here, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wang, for Dr. Wang, for setting the stage of this debate. And excuse me, in fact, it's more than 150 countries in the world that contracted with China under this Road and Belt initiative. So it's huge. It's most of the each of African states has is agreement with China. But what is the basic package that's offered China to those countries? It's about shaping the trade roads. What has been delivered in terms of infrastructures? Is there any figures you can share with our audience to give an idea of the global investment China has done on that road, on that initiative?
Thank you. I think there are two comparative advantages of the Belt Road Initiative, why it's so attractive. First, infrastructure building, as I mentioned. But infrastructure building, you should focus on long-term. State-owned enterprises play a very important role. If everything according to the market principles, and then the market actually not a fault of the infrastructure. So that's the reason even the Americans they suffered of the old infrastructure, maybe also Europe, because the private capital not so much interest in doing so. So China we should have a strong state-owned enterprises. And that's the reason we say you claim the rules-based international order, this unfair competition. But for the different, for the BRI countries, particularly for the Africans, they need a strong government, they need infrastructure building. Also mutually integrated. I visited the Africans, for nearly 20 times. Before I never visit, because of BRI, even Morocco, this is my fourth visit. I fly to African countries, particularly Franco countries. Even sometimes the two neighbors, they don't have the direct flight. They should change the flight from Paris and other. And now they have more direct flights. And they mutually connect each other. That's the hope, of course, Africans in domestic integration and solidarity. So I think the rise of Africa, and I think contribute to the, we say, globalization or global regionalization.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I might jump to my second panelist, and could you give us your perspective on what's been delivered this 10 years of the Road and Belt Initiative, and then we are going to engage on realization, but also what's new policies is being to shape. But first of all, make an assessment on what's been delivered today.
Okay, first I want to thanks for having me here. So just as Professor Wang said, actually when PRC, the People's Republic of China, was founded in 1949, at that moment we were extreme poor. We were a agrarian country. With 70 years development, right now we became the top industrialization. So industrialization based on infrastructure, as Professor Wang mentioned in Chinese proverb, if you want to get rich, build a road first. So infrastructure play extremely important role for the industrialization. In infrastructure constitute two parts. One is physical infrastructure such as road, railway, bridge, port, airport, power plant, and invisible infrastructure is a complete education and public health system. So China wants to share our experience with the whole world. As Chinese proverb said, to teach people how to fish instead of give them a fish. So actually BRI is a kind of platform. It can stimulate the connectivity among Asia, Europe, Africa, Latin America, even North America. Okay, so connectivity is a key to link the whole world together to promote industrialization in developing country and international trade among the whole world. So infrastructure is not the goal for BRI. Infrastructure is a tool. The goal, the final goal is industrialization, especially for the developing country. Infrastructure is a bottleneck. So we want to break up the bottleneck and create a platform and create a base for industrialization. Only industrialization is a key for the development for any developing country. So right now, build a road, build trains, build a port, build so many physical infrastructure. It is only a platform for the new technology can be applied in the developing world. So we really want to share our low-cost technology with all developing countries and then stimulate the local industrialization, such as create the industrial park and provide green technology to fighting climate change, but also to stimulate the economic development. That's it.
Thank you for that. And maybe we are going to jump also to an African perspective about what China is achieving in the continent. And I would give the floor to maybe to Dr. Lo, Mubarak Lo. He is an advisor to the Prime Minister in Senegal. Mm-hmm. He's been also a local mayor, and he has experienced, I think, what China is bringing to Africa, and in his country, and in his land, in his town. Maybe you can have a few words on that. How is that? How China is cooperating with Africa in terms of infrastructure, what's been mentioning? Is it a road to industrialization? How to make the most of the Chinese offer to African countries?
Thank you very much. In fact, I was involved with this initiative from three perspectives. Number one, I agree with you. The Chinese that decided to invest in Senegal in the textile industry, I am the one who went to Ethiopia, Rwanda, to convince them to come to Senegal, because there was negotiation many years and it was stuck. And I told the Prime Minister, just give me a ticket, I will bring them. He gave me 2 tickets. After 2 tickets, they come and invest in Senegal. So if you go to our special economic zone, you will still find this company. Maybe the owner has changed, but the activity is there. So they are doing textile. It could be industrialization, so maybe we should add it. Number 2, I was also collaborating with the University of Peking. I think you are from this university. So we even signed an agreement in order to see how to monitor and evaluate the industrialization of Senegal through the special economic zone. Because of COVID, we didn't go through, but I think we have to come back to this agreement. Maybe I will try to come and visit again the country and see how to move forward. Number 3, I am a mayor, and I have in my city many Chinese. They are building a road. So maybe it's a part of this road and belt, but it's a government initiative because it's an internal road, around 50 kilometers, but the base in my city. But what I want to mention is what China is offering is not gift. The drive, you can put all what you want, but the drive is business. It's business. So that's why it's going too fast. They are doing major projects in East Africa, especially in Djibouti, in Rwanda, in RDC. I think it's very important. But don't forget that all this is also based in a business model where, at the end of the day, the companies intervening will have profit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mubarak, to remind us. And that is the perfect transition to go to Alex, which is a distinguished expert from Chatham House, United Kingdom. Alex, you've been writing a paper on what's been one of the major criticism on this initiative, which is probably it's about lending money, fast easing states, partnering states to get their infrastructures done. It's been all said, all raised about indebtedness, and there's a debt problem. According to you, what is your take on that point?
So Dr. Lowe already said it's not a gift, and it isn't a gift. I mean, the official figures for Belt and Road Initiative investments in Africa are very impressive. 10,000 kilometers of railway, 100,000 kilometers of road, 1,000 bridges, 100 ports, power plants, hospitals, schools. I've looked at this myself, research at Chatham House in a number of countries, and the infrastructure is good, but it's also, some of it is bad, and I have to say some of it's very ugly. So you have a variety of different experiences in different places. And the common denominator for the ugly is that the host government or authorities are not holding the Chinese construction companies to account. And so they have poor quality appraisal, poor standards. And just like the problems in China, and look at all the scandals in real estate and other things in China, it's replicated here in the continent. So there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, the reality on debt is that in total, actually, only 12% of Africa's private and public external debt is owed to China, and it's particularly to a small number of countries. So don't believe, if you hear from Japan or India or at times the United States, that Africa has been debt entrapped deliberately by Beijing. The field research we've done, the evidence doesn't suggest that. It suggests actually a very different sort of pattern of often haphazard lending, not strategic, and at times not particularly political, although clearly there is politics in this. Eswatini won't get any investment because it recognizes Taipei, so there is some politics in this, but it's much more broad than that. And so our results in the end concluded that looking at the 7 most exposed countries in Africa, it includes one that you mentioned, I think it was Dr. Wong, Professor Wong, which is Djibouti. Now, there is some evidence, I think, that Djibouti was more exposed deliberately by Beijing because of geostrategic reasons, because of its location. Gulf of Aden, military base, and actually Ethiopia it's the entry to Ethiopia, so there are other reasons there. But there isn't evidence elsewhere. So the issue then going forward is how to manage this debt in the future. And so there's been a G20 initiative during the COVID crisis. There was the DSSI. There's now something called Common Framework, which involves Ethiopia, Chad, Zambia, and now Ghana. And this is where there are tough negotiations. And again, China is not in this for a gift. China is asking that their creditors get paid first. And so this is where we have very serious debates. There seems to now be progress on Zambia. It's not clear yet if there's going to be as much progress on Ghana. And so China is going to have to accept that it itself is going to have to write off debts and take haircuts. And that's not something that China's been exposed to very much in the past. And also, how is China going to relate to private equity, particularly private sector? So this is very live, and it's happening at the moment. And the one thing that is still problematic is that we do not have full transparency of the scale of the Chinese loans, how much money was spent. And these debt renegotiations are requiring more disclosure. And so that's a really important learning process, I think, that we're going to have to see for China. Because the needs on the African continent, this is my final point, are enormous. There needs to be more infrastructure, more investment. And I think the moment of the big Chinese loans happened, well, they peaked in 2016, when that year there was 29.5 billion of loans. It really declined after that in 2019. And the second round of these discussion, I think we're going to be looking to the future, which is quite exciting. China in 2021 unveiled a global development initiative that has a different vision from what we saw over the last 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very thorough and insightful contribution. Maybe Dr. Wang asked me for a reply in one sentence, and then we go back to further debate with each of you. Will have a second round of speech.
Thank you. One of the we say criticism to the BRI's transparency or debt, the reason I think is because China is not a member of OECD and also Paris Club.
Member of the CAD.
Not yet.
Of the coordination of all the international donors.
Yeah, so that reason, actually, the traditional IMF, World Bank, Paris Club, OECD, all that kind of assistance, China not in. So in the eyes of the West, it's not transparent.
Is China coordinating now with Paris Club initiatives?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Even OECD asked China to join many times. But actually, we have the Center for the Knowledge Sharing. So how to empower the people. So recently, like in Djibouti, you mentioned about, there is the Luban workshop. And so empower and training the people, and then improve the air, the water quality and the living standard, all this. So this is not just the debt, it's money. This is
But I think we have time also to get back to this question with a new improvement and change that have been taking place in Road and Belt Initiative. I will jump also to another speaker, which could raise also another topic at the heart of this Africa-China cooperation. Also, I know that Road and Belt Initiative is not only on Africa, but there's an emerging and pressing topic for Africa, which is climate change. What is your perspective on that, Mr. Bankole? If you have a few words on that topic.
All right, thank you so much. I think in line with with all the concepts around the BRI, I think that that has really helped us in trying to see how to structure out some greater finances when it comes to climate and green finance. In Africa, or particularly in Nigeria, right, there's a huge drive around solar energy as a new energy formation system for the different energy gaps that we have. And also we look at gas as also a very strong component for our energy transition plan. And now we need a couple of trillion dollars to be able to finance these different systems. And for us, we are always looking at that partner that sort of understand the context and the challenges or dynamics that face our country. So like what Professor Wang said, that we approach different countries with different perspectives. So for Nigeria, we have seen that our renewable energy drive has been greatly supported by China through the BRI systems. And also recently we just got, there's this 3-firm tripartite partnerships with our National Agency for Scientific Engineering around renewable energy, production, solar PV systems, battery systems, and coal. For us, we know that there's a huge technology gap, when it comes to prototyping and also developing. And we found China as that very strong partner that helps to do that turnaround, that just-in-time turnaround, for the kinds of innovative systems that we want around energy efficiency and all. And so for us, we have sort of studied how this can work, particularly for Nigeria, and what sort of critical infrastructure do we open up stronger business ties and stronger investment opportunities. Like everyone has rightly said here, this is not a gift, it is business. And so how do we look at the business model as it affects the emerging economy that we've got, alongside the different challenges we have around governance and also around delivery of jobs. I think that with the new government that we have in Nigeria currently, we take things around standardization and transparency also very serious. And that again has formed many of the, partnerships and agreements that we've signed, also with China and also every other country that is currently financing a few other infrastructure partnerships in Nigeria. And some of that renegotiation also for us has to stem from the issue of inflation. Our country in the last 6 months or so has faced some really serious inflation issues, right? And for us, we are always looking at that partner that sort of understands us, right? That sees that the time between turnaround of investments has to be as short as possible. And I think that we found that in China, and which is why our vice president, when he visited China in October, I think, for the BRI forum, also stated that we are really proud of the partnership, of the quick turnaround time that NASENI, that's the National Agency for Science and Engineering, was able to sign up a $2 billion investment partnerships with Nigeria, right? And it was within probably, I think, about 3 months or so for that kind of relationships to happen. Now, the fragility also of looking at whether there was proper due diligence and co for us, I think that because we know how fragile and how dynamic our systems are, we always look for that partner that can equally help us see things from where we know that we are not totally perfect. And we know that every investment partnership that the country has signed over time has had its own challenges in one way or that, either in payment plan or payment structure. So I think that for Nigeria, we have the president of the PRC also also mentioned that he's looking to how the Chinese economy can support even much more. Around solar, around agriculture, science, and even manufacturing and production. But then we've seen the works that has been done in railways and also aviation. And we think that it is one of those kind of partnerships that you really want to hold at, on one hand, and at the same time continue to explore how best we can negotiate a good contract or partnership that, that doesn't put us into that debt-trapped issue, and at the same time can also help our investors know the benefit of being part of this. I think China has seen Nigeria as a very strong African partner. I mean, we are the largest economy, in the last, say, 4 months that the Nigerian government have been running, we see that the kinds of policies that our new president has been signing are the kind of policies that opens up for a lot more investment, not just only with China, but also with every other, economy. Even Morocco also came over, and then we've got a lot of context around, fertilizers and other types of, partnerships that can work in Nigeria. So I think that for us, we see it as a win-win, situation, and we're always looking at ways to make it even a bit more better for both countries when it comes to access to market and also access to finance. And for us, it's very clear. Our relationship with China is super business, right? And we see that business, possibly because of the of the turnaround time around production and investment in China, and also the market that we have when it comes to consumption and trading in Nigeria.
Thank you for this very pragmatical and Nigerian insight. And I'm turning to my other panelists from Cameroon, Mr. Tumuntai Kennedy. Our Mr. Lei and Mr. Wang mentioned that it was also about shaping new trades roads and integrating other countries and African countries into the road of the goods and the trades internationally. What is your perspective on that topic?
Thank you very much for this question. I think that I want to go back to Professor Wang's perspective that the Chinese adaged that say, if you want to get rich, be in infrastructure. We have seen in the past years from analysis of the African Business Information Bank, we want investors to come in and they ask for everything. Are there infrastructures? Are there rules? Are there regulations? Are there capacity buildings and so on? Do we have them before we come? And now, for the first time, Africa has a lot of opportunities to tap into the capital market. The Chinese came, you know, conception and building goes together fast. Concept and building. So in Cameroon, what we saw, let me give you some statistics, that by the development of our deep seaport, the Kribi seaport, that took 3 years to be built, and we discovered that the revenue went from approximately 750 million CFA, which is approximately 27 million euros, dollars, to approximately 230 million dollars custom revenue when this port just started. And you can imagine what was being done with this money. This money was used to build the schools, increase the infrastructures, and we saw that many companies started investing around these areas, changing families' life. A lot of entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs that wanted to go to Canada, to Europe, or wherever, they started looking for opportunities. So, in fact, what we are seeing, just like my brother Bang says, we know it's business. And it is enlightened self-interest. And that's what global politics has been driven. Everybody goes for enlightened self-interest. China wants their interest. The Europeans wants their interest. Cameroon wants their interest. And we saw a partner that actually did that. Let me just give you a very interesting example that we had. There was a bridge that was to be built in Cameroon, and the bidders were so many. So the French company won this bridge to build it. Guess who built it? The Chinese. So the French got the contract and turned around, gave it to the Chinese built it. And everybody was fine. The French, in their negotiation pattern, because benefited, the Chinese benefited, and the Cameroonians benefited. So what I think we should be doing is to see how we go further. And that's where we say the Chinese, in their enlightened self-interest with the African continental free trade, they have to go further. And that's what we have been criticizing. Get in, bring in your investment, bring in the companies to the African continent. It makes no sense to produce in the largest factories in the world, which is in China, and try to carry this good across maritime route. Go to the different African countries, create this industrialization process, and we are so happy that many African countries have come in with new policies that they do not exploit raw materials. You have to do a semi-transformations in Africa, and that is going to be the game changer. You will see now many Chinese companies, European companies, struggling to go back to Africa and create industry in it, as well as move, get these goods and export either to Africa or to other European countries. So I think that the game changing, as my brother said, is to change, is to make a double I. Let's say Belt and Road Belt and Road Industrialization Initiative. So we add now, in the second phase, let's add I, and I should be creating not just road infrastructures, but we should build the industrialization facilities. And we are happy that they are now including getting the Chinese cultural centers, language centers. And to be honest, I benefited from that. My brother went to China because he couldn't go to Europe, and found himself from Tunisia, and then found himself going to China. He taught English in China, and today he's a big investor in Cameroon and working in partnership with Chinese companies. So let's just understand we need to create space for people, for Africans to be able to bring their creativity into fruitfulness.
Thank you for that comment. We've been talking about African responsibility and in terms of governance quality, on which depends strongly the quality of what's delivered in the Chinese African cooperation. We have been also raising the point of of attracting industrialization industry, Chinese industry to Africa. And I will back to my last panelist, and which is both a distinguished expert from VTO, but also Moroccan national. And you say, you know that specifically in this region, in Tangier, there's a prospect of big industry, gigafactory, localization, Chinese investments, because Tangier is you get Tangier made harbor, you get European markets, African market, you can connect to the US too. So what is your perspective as a multilateral?
From the World Trade Organization, I would like to say, as a Moroccan, I'm very proud that Professor Wong spoke about Ibn Battuta, and we are in the city of Ibn Battuta. He was born here, and he travels for 30 years, and he spent almost a year in China. And when he came back, the last thing he did is actually he was summoned by the King of Morocco then in the 14th century to speak about his travels, and he wrote this book called Al-Rihla. And I happened that my father, one of the first books he gave me was this book, Al-Rihla. So I'm very enthusiastic about your proposals of having a movie or a book about him. You have a very enthusiastic fan of Ibn Battuta. And the other thing which is interesting in our dialect, somebody who travels a lot, and I happened to do that when I was a negotiator here in Morocco. All my family used to call me Ibn Battuta. He's gone there, he's gone. So I just closed that because I think to go back to what the initiative can bring in terms of Africa. In global governance of international trade. It gave a lot of a spectacular rise to Chinese exports from 200 billion to 3,000 billion. And exports of China now are more important than the GDP of the United Kingdom, for example. So, but now I think with that leadership comes responsibilities, and that's what probably the Belt and Road Initiative would bring, especially in the global context, which is now quite interesting in terms of geopolitical tensions. And in the impact of that, we have a lot of research in the WTO that shows that there is a tendency of fragmentation. You basically see in a reality where at least two blocks are trying to work in different manners. And we are warning against that. That's the first message. To say fragmentation is a lose-lose operation for everybody. It could end up with about 5.5% loss in world GDP, which is kind of the economy of Japan to be wiped out. But at the same time, what we preach is something called re-globalization. There is a movement to redesign global value chains. And by that, what we're trying to say, and my boss, she's from Nigeria, by the way, what she's trying to preach is that we need new actors into GVCs, global value chains, especially from Africa. And I think the new impetus given to BRI now, especially this year, in shifting a little bit from the big infrastructure projects into more kind of small is beautiful projects, people-to-people projects. I think this is something that Africa needs very badly in terms of getting these industries to be in a relationship where we go beyond raw materials to something that can be produced in Africa, then produced in another country in Africa, then goes maybe ultimately to China, as GVCs are constructed today. 50% actually of international trade is inputs into GVCs. A lot of people don't know that. Even more than half is non-finished product that have to move around so you get the final product. So this is a real opportunity. And since we are in Tangier, as our moderator mentioned, Morocco made the bold move to go into the value chain of automotive. Risky, but then now the results are there. And that's something that can be actually shared in terms of experience with others. There's another one where actually this is already happening. And 2 weeks ago with my boss, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, we had the pleasure to meet the head of the OECP here. And we had a very important presentation about how he's trying to redesign the value chain of fertilizers, working with countries like Nigeria and Ethiopia to build capacity within the countries to produce the fertilizer, one. Second, also to customize the fertilizer. And that's something I didn't know. So the global value chain becomes kind of a local value chain where you customize the fertilizer to the soil. So agriculture becomes more efficient. So these are the type, I think, of ideas we need Chinese-African cooperation, maybe with some countries of Africa, Nigeria, Morocco, or Egypt that are a bit advanced in terms of their policy, industrial policy. But we need kind of that synergy to be created within that initiative. I think that's some of the things that multilaterally, China now is a kind of a natural leader inside the World Trade Organization for developing countries. But it has that kind of responsibility to, in the face of fragmentation, try to redesign.
Need 2 minutes each to get the most of this debate and pardon? No, and maybe on how China is reshifting its offer and on the main ideas that are connecting China to get its Road and Belt Initiative plus 10, a new proposal for the developing country. Could we have your take on the main ideas that are following China right now?
Thank you. First, we say...
And feel free to respond also to what's been said by the other panelists and to complement, to discuss, in fact, engage discussion.
So, now?
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. We say the mentality, I think, of the BRI is, we say, reforming globalization from so-called the super globalization driven by the new liberalism is off capital, by capital, and for capital. And the capital focused on the rich people in the rich area, right? Landlocked areas suffered a lot. So the BRI is more focused on the mutual connectivity, landlocked areas, and then coastal areas, land and the sea, and then different continentals and the different regions. So that's more, we say, of the people, by the people, and for the people. The people, 85% is developing countries. The most young and dynamic people is from Africa. It's from the Muslim world, actually. So that's the reason prosperities, achievements, many in the BRI projects. Second, it's only 10 years. It's like a baby. Yeah. We are learning by doing in China. So of course, many problems. But to solve this problem, we make progress. But this is joint consultation. It's not just the China initiative, but it's done in different countries. We are learning from them, actually. It's like myself, actually. There's a slogan before, right? It's knowledge is far away from Arabic, you learn from distance, right? But now I say also knowledge is from far away from China. We came to Arabic countries to learn. So I think it's very important. So that reason my book, I have 10 books actually. One is will give to you because it's in Arabic. 10 books on the BRI, the Committee of Shared Future. And lastly, recently there's a report, I think, to answer your questions. It's McKinsey, American consulting companies, say the next China is China. so-called the decouple, de-risk, because China has the most complete categories of industries. So that's the reason everything built by China, with China, not just projects, products, the cheapest and the most efficient. But we still want to cooperate with the United States, with Europe, with other initiatives, because it's open. We can make this do better. So like the AIIB, the Western countries participate and make this high quality. So we are ready to cooperate with the US and Europe in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And what is your take, Mr. Lei, in is the Chinese corporation, is China well equipped to do some small people-to-people cooperation project?
Okay.
It's one point that had been raised also by one panelist. What do you think? How is China well equipped to do that?
Okay, thanks. First, I want to respond the conception of debt trap. So I think a debt trap is not a debt trap; it's a narrative trap. Okay, actually, according to the statistical number, Chinese loan to Africa is much lower than the loan from World Bank and the IMF. So first, politically, China doesn't put any additional condition for BRI. Economically, the international investment and the international loan just follow the regulation by WTO, World Bank, and the IMF. So China follow the existing international transaction, international investment, and the international finance regulation. If it is a debt trap, so how about IMF and the World Bank? So I think the narrative trap is, want to give a better reputation on BRI. Of course, we need to focus on some, potential problem or potential risk. However, if everybody follow the rule, the regulation, which had already implemented for 40 or 100 years, it's not any problem. I think most businessmen in Africa and the national leaders, they are smart. They know how to avoid any potential risk. So also for Chinese investor, we also want to avoid any potential risk. So that's why when we create some new infrastructure, we put a very high standard. For example, Mombasa-Nairobi train, okay? The construction standard is much higher than in UK and in most European countries. So the train had already run for a long time. There's no any problem. So in Chinese, we call it actions always louder than speak. So if we try to do something, it's much better than give much critique. So let's try it. Let the citizen from the local give the evaluation. That evaluation play extremely important role than the third part. So it's my response for that. And for as you said, it is very important for the small and yet smart program. It is one way to avoid any long-term and huge investment risk. So, for example, right now China focuses on the small yet smart program, and it is a livelihood program. It is for the renewable energy system. It is for the Luban workshop to train local people have kind of skill and create more jobs. So eventually, in this summer, I went to a Chinese solar plant center. Do you know how big of this size? It's almost 1.5 times than the size of Singapore. So in this year, China invested in renewable power system. It's much higher than the traditional carbon-based power plant. So eventually, we want to share the low cost of solar, the low cost of the renewable energy system with our African sisters and brothers. So for those small yet smart program also we welcome any students from Africa. I'm a professor in School of International Studies. So in my school, almost two-thirds of the international students came from Africa. So eventually, I think, so for the infrastructure construction, okay, and share for technology and educational exchange, those small yet smart program will, stimulate and promote the cooperation between China and Africa. Thanks.
Mubarak, in a few words, what would be your recommendation to make it a better partnership?
Maybe I will surprise everybody. I think Africa needs more Chinese technology than Chinese money. Because some projects, when China brings the money and the enterprise, it could be more expensive than traditional projects you will gain by doing tender. So what we advocate for is to always to have a solid document file, so studied by the government expert. And then you do a tender. And eventually the Chinese firm will win, and because it will bring good technology with low cost. But if you mix the two, generally you can end up having expensive project because all is in the package.
Chinese technology can be competitive, obviously, for Africa because it's been higher quality along the world and cheap. Alex, are you convinced by the response on debt and the debt-trapped narrative has been elucidated? You mentioned you have been picturing it in the context, but how can we go further on that topic in Chinese-African cooperation?
Okay, we have 8 seconds left.
Yeah, I think no, they're going to give us 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So the first point, which has already been said, is that China is de-risking. And to be honest, my view, I agree about the debt trap narrative. I'm not disagreeing with that. But in a way, China fell into its own debt trap. It got embraced into some relationships that it got very difficult then to de-embrace itself. And so you can see now that where there are new loans, and they're much less, as I said, are in competitive situations in places like Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal, South Africa, for example. And that's partly because the regulatory and other frameworks are stronger there. So China is de-risking. That's my first point. The second point is that we're seeing a definite shift to FDI from loans. That's good, foreign direct investment. And what we are seeing is a lot more activity of not big Chinese banks kind of calling the shots, but family firms in China. And that is good. I mean, and so I do think that the whole profile is changing, and the relationship of how to unlock those loans. And my final point is that it goes back to the point on African agency. So, for example, 2 quick examples. In Mozambique, there was a massive bridge built in Maputo across to the other side from it, built by China. But the quality appraisal was by an American firm and then a German one. So Chinese construction, but appraised by Western companies. The Mozambique government insisted on it. Final example, the Trans-Guinea Railway and infrastructure. The Guinean administration is insisting that the Chinese investing company there works with the Australian-British one. And so this is where there is, I think, a good argument about Africans themselves demanding what they want, where they have a strong developmental vision of what they require. And so you mentioned fragmentation. I actually think this is one way of countering fragmentation if you've got good government policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Maybe a word from you, Laurent Touba. Few recommendations in being short. Sorry, but keep it short. But your main recommendation.
Okay. So my recommendation will be that maybe the turnaround time around for that investment in Africa should be faster. I think that China has come to understand how many African governments work and how some of the African environment also work. I think if China should also look beyond the macro type of big projects that take a longer time of investment, and also look at business to business type of investments, I think is also going to help. I mean, there's a new, the new economy, the emerging economy in Africa currently around, climate-driven investments or climate-driven economy is opening up at a very faster rate, and energy is at its core. Energy is at its core, and so at this point, what I'll recommend again is, there is no hard and fast rule to how every country should deal with each other. I think that every country that enters into a partnership clearly understands why they're getting into that partnership. And I think that for my country in Nigeria, I think that we are happy with the Chinese. We are open to a lot more conversations and investment with the Chinese. We have come to understand that we need to protect our interests first before any other person's interest. And we're really proud to continue to extend stronger negotiations if we see that a particular contract doesn't favor us as a country. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. To mention maybe a word on in which sector you see the Chinese investment needed, for example, in Cameroon or?
Well, in the Central African region, we have a lot of raw materials, but what we saw in the past years is that the Chinese built a lot of road infrastructure spots, but they have not really gotten into the energy productions. And knowing that they are being scrutinized, we know they will come with clean energy. So why not bring those family businesses, as Lou said, to make sure that we do the learning on the job and build those energy needed to, to boost our industrial transformation. So I think entrepreneurship, technology from China, and energy will make a lot of sense.
Thank you very much. A final last word. So it's more about FDI needed and maybe cooperation, but foremost FDI and Chinese investment, private investment in Africa is needed. What's your point? Final point.
My point, I agree a lot of with what my former panelists have said, but I think one key point, especially to redesign this global value chains I was speaking about, is that Africans need to drive that agenda from themselves. And in one vehicle I see that is really important to activate and be really serious about it is this African free trade area. We need really to be serious because the growth should come from intra-African trade. Then you deal with other partners. I think that's very important, the vision, the drive. The second and two bullet points I didn't have time to mention in addition to the redesign of global value chains, I think there's a key important issue in climate change. Decarbonizing in Africa can be a very good sector for cooperation with China because China is a leader in at least two major issues, solar panels and electrical vehicles. And if we're talking about industrialization, these are two avenues where you can have that reorganization on redesign of the global value chains, at least in these two sectors. The third and last point is digitalization. Again, I think to leapfrog the growth in intra-African trade, we need Africans to really move up their game in that sector. And I speak about that because in the WTO there is a negotiation on setting up the rules for e-commerce. I think only maybe 6 African countries participate. So we need that kind of engagement because that's the sector where actually you can have inclusivity, leapfrogging, you name it. So those are really the 3 messages that I would probably leave the audience with.
Thank you very much. We've been starting a bit late, so we have not enough room for the audience to ask questions, but I'm sure you can ask whatever you want to the panelists. And another applause for those brilliant panelists. Thank you very much for your comment.